Excellent. It is so cool to be here. I have looked up to the PyData community for ages, and so now I'm having a bit of a pinch me moment where it's like, wow, I get to be here in Amsterdam. Amsterdam, by the way, one of my favorite places in the world, and I told a friend, I was like, there's no better feeling than riding your bike around Amsterdam and looking at the canals and seeing the beautiful architecture. And my friend responded, and he was like, well, that's because you haven't tried heroin. And I was like, okay, all right. Look, the organizers are like instantly regretting that they chose me as the keynote speaker right now. All right, so speaking of heroin, I was in San Francisco about 2 weeks ago, and anybody who's been to San Francisco knows why those two things connect. And while I was there, there's Waymos driving around, and I was in the lovely area of the Tenderloin, and there was a Waymo that was passing by, and we had some junkies that decided to make a little experiment with the Waymo. And so you get this guy, he walks out kind of like a crab in front of this Waymo, and the Waymo hasn't seen this in his training data, apparently, because it decides to stop, and it wants to see what this guy's doing. What's the pedestrian going to do? And so as this person is yelling, and they're in front of the Waymo stopped in the middle of the road, this guy takes off like a COVID-19 mask, and he puts it on to one of the sensors, and it completely bricks out the Waymo. The Waymo can't go anywhere. It can't move. It's in the middle of the road, and the guy walks off screaming, and now you've got a traffic jam because of this Waymo. And I feel like there is some kind of a joke in there about like vibe coding into production, but I couldn't make the connection in time for this talk, so if you can figure out what the punchline is, come talk to me afterwards. That story has absolutely nothing to do with my talk. I just want to make sure we're all awake and you got the vibe right. And I was talking to Mael earlier. He was like, okay, you're all ready for your talk? And I said, yeah, I got like 20 minutes, 25 minutes. If you really need me to, I can cut it down to the 15. And he said, 15? I said 50, 50. Instantly, my stomach drops. I'm like, oh my God, I'm about to give the longest, shortest talk in the world. What am I going to do? So I start texting a friend, and I say, hey, that PyData talk that I'm about to give, I'm so excited for? It's 50 minutes. I have it planned for 15. And he just wrote me back, and he said, talk slow. So now, if you are watching this in the future online, you can go ahead and put it at 2x. That's going to be all I'm saying. No, I'm joking. I appreciate you playing along with me while I cosplay as a stand-up comedian. Let's get into this talk. I promise we're going to do that. The agentification of software is something I am passionate about, and I feel like it has a UX problem. I want to hopefully inspire you all today or challenge you to think differently about things. I saw that AI engineering title was very high on the number of attendees that we have here. So you all are building the future. Hopefully we can bring the future forward as I address some of these issues that I've encountered, or at least we make the implicit explicit, or explicit implicit. I can't remember exactly how that goes, but I just want to call it out. You feel the pain every day. Maybe you don't even notice it, and you now hopefully will start to see it more and think about how you can build to make it better. Before we get into the terms and clarifications of terms, this is me. Sometimes I like to get in ice baths because I live in Germany and I just put a dumpster outside. I also started the community. Mael and I were joking before I got on here. He said, yeah, your intro is going to be short because you haven't done much. I said, damn, dude, you really know how to pump a guy up before his talk goes, huh? Let's do this. So I also want to give a huge shout out. We do MLOps community meetups here in Amsterdam, and Bauke might be somewhere in the crowd. He organizes them. And along with the team here, we do them like monthly, bi-monthly, if you want to do that. But we also have other ways that you can engage in the community: podcast, newsletters, in-person events, virtual events, all that fun stuff. And one thing that I'm super passionate about is one-to-one matching, because I feel like a community the beauty of it is you get many-to-many conversations that are happening. It's not like one person, like me right now talking to you all. This is a one-to-many conversation. But communities and events like this are many-to-many conversations also. So now, the meat and potatoes of the talk. Let's get into what exactly we mean with the agentification of software. I want to define the terms so we have a foundation that we can then build off of. All right? This is a bit of a utopian idea. It's where we say we're going to interact with machines through natural language, and we're just going to give it an outcome, and it's going to figure out how to do it. So after you spend 10 minutes vibe coding, you probably have had the thought, wait a minute, why isn't every interaction that I have with a machine like this? Why do I have to click around and find things anymore? Let me just tell it what I want, and it does it, right? So in this utopian scenario, you could think as big as like me on the marketing team. I want to say, hey, agent, you've got a $1,000 budget. Go and get me 100 leads. That could be something that you do, all right? But I'm going to tell you a few reasons why I don't think that we're primed for that scenario. And also, again, I want to challenge your thinking on the status quo that we currently have right now. So, the first problem that I see is the downfall of chat. I got a little beef with chat. What happens? Well, the first experience that you have is you go in, and we've all had this, right? We go in, and it says, ask me anything. And you go, anything? Really? Anything? All right, let's try it. And you ask something random, and you go, that was pretty good. All right, let's try something I know. I guess it works, kind of. And it reminds me of how I saw a tweet where a guy said, I asked Deep Research to compile a report on something that I'm an expert in, and the report wasn't that good. So now, I only ask Deep Research to compile reports on things I know nothing about. And that's what kind of happens these days. With that, though, is we're losing trust. We're losing the user's trust. We're also over-promising and under-delivering. Because you said anything, and it's not really anything, is it? So that's the first beef that I got with chat. The second beef is that you're putting a lot of cognitive load onto the user. You know how hard it is to formulate a sentence? Words are hard. And now I got to make it understandable to a machine and then take it out of my mind and transmit it into a machine? Okay, that's a lot of work. Like, especially when we're used to swiping and scrolling and double tapping. Right now, if you think about how we interact with our phones or our machines, there's a lot of us being fed things. Now with chat, you're asking me to be the chef, and I gotta go and chop carrots. I don't even like carrots. So, what happens? Well, let's think about the next issue that I have with chat. And that is uncertain attribution. You don't get any feedback on when something fails, if it was you that failed or if it was the agent that failed. I type something in, I give it the prompt, and I say, go do that, and then it doesn't do it, and I think, if I use a different word here, will it do it? And then I try it, and you get this prompting dance that goes on, and you really expect users to go back and forth like 2, 3, 4, 10 times to try and get the outcome that they want? That's absurd. That's just not going to happen. Users are not that patient. And that creates misaligned expectations. Again, we're saying, ask me anything. Then you ask something, it doesn't get it, and I got to go back and forth. And you don't tell me when it doesn't execute. I don't know. Like, was it me or was it you, right? I don't get any feedback on, hey, just maybe prompt it a little better and I'll get it done next time, right? There's nothing. Either it hangs or it does what you asked it, but it doesn't do it in the way that you wanted. And so I feel like This is the coolest thing to happen to software since sliced bread. But we are limited by the medium right now. So what do I mean by that? Well, text. Text is limiting us. And there are certain things that we do as humans when we communicate with other humans, and it's very restricted when we only have text and a context window, right? Anyone who codes knows that maybe the majority of your time is not spent coding, it's probably spent aligning. Especially if you're at a big company, you just are professional aligners. You're aligning on everything. We've all been in this meeting right there. We all have had that experience because we need to align more and we need to figure it out. But the truth is, when we're aligning, we want to try and get like a mind meld with the other person. We want to make sure that we are understanding each other to the most precise way possible. And so, when I'm aligning, I don't want to use only words. And that's not because I'm a baboon, but that's because when I spend 10 minutes aligning with somebody, if I'm with another engineer at a whiteboard, I'm diagramming stuff, and I'm like circling this and drawing arrows to that and pointing at things as I'm talking on the whiteboard. And I'm talking about diagramming for this communication, not like an S3 bucket and diagramming architecture diagrams. No, like when you're at a whiteboard with somebody trying to align on something, you're diagramming, you're drawing things, and what we do not have is that whiteboard for how we interact with agents. Right now, like where's that 10 minutes at a whiteboard interface that we might want, right? When we're humans talking to humans, there's so much rich data that is exchanged, whether it's on the whiteboard or whether it's like our voice that we're using or the facial expressions. There's so many different things that are being transmitted that we just don't get with text. And with that text box, it's not possible, right? So what I feel like we could use is richer UI elements. And there's some cool projects that are doing this. But if we are, right now, if you think about it, we give text and we get back text, or maybe we give some photos, or we give a voice note, and we get back maybe some photos or a voice note. And that's why I feel like this project is super cool. It's called Language GUI or Language GUI, and it helps you get like, maybe the model can, or the agent can give you back a podcast snippet or an embedded tweet or post, whatever it may be. This is a step in the right direction, right? And I've also seen some other cool things in the right direction on how we might want to solve this. Another example is here, census.app. It can let you filter. On the right-hand side, you can choose like, okay, I'm going to filter stuff like I normally have these interactions with the UI. So it's like taking what we've known and bringing it into the world of agents. And the next one that I want to show you is this right here. Honestly, when I found this website, I sent it to like 10 friends, and I didn't say anything more than life-changing. This website, I was like, oh my God, I love this thing. This is incredible. And I want to just like try and jump out, and let's see if we can just go to it real fast. So AI UX patterns, and I'm doing this a little bit like this right now. So forgive me if it's slow and painful to watch me click through on the second screen. But what you get is all kinds of different examples of ways that you can change the UX for how you interact with the agents. And some that I've really liked are here that I already queued up, hopefully. And this one is prompt config. So again, taking that idea of can we fine-grain what we're looking for when we are talking to the agent more? Can we bring like different types of voices or what responses we want? We want 2 to 4 paragraphs, or we only want 1, right? Another example that I really liked was this one, where you get to play with, so there's a whole animation around it. I'll go through it real fast. Why were the bowls so good? All right, it comes out with this, but then you get to play with just one part of the output and say, that part of the output, I'm going to create another prompt to make it very specific. Everything else stays the same, but now I don't have to say, like, in point 1, do this, and try and specify where exactly I want it changed. I just click on it, and then I give the prompt, and boom. It outputs everything else the same, but that point is now expanded on, right? So those are some super cool patterns that I'm seeing with agents. But where was I? Hold on, that's the next slide. And now you're seeing everything, which is awesome. Good thing you're not seeing my notes. Enter full screen, yes, please. So what I still don't see, though, with all of these projects is I don't see steering capabilities. I don't see the ability for us to be able to steer the agents in different ways as they're going about acting. And I've heard folks talk about how, yeah, like the future is, you just give an agent a task, and then you come back a week later, and it's done. And it's like, yeah, right, I'm going to just let an agent burn a bunch of GPUs for a week, not knowing what it's doing? You really think, like, even an intern, I wouldn't let just hang out for a week and not know what they're doing, right? So what happens is, with language, honestly, it's like inherently fuzzy. And when you have to interact with an agent, you use words, and words are symbols for things that we experience in our day-to-day lives, and you don't have this like real precision on how you are interacting with the words, how you're dialing it up or dialing it down, right? You can say like, oh, that was easy, or that was hard, or that was really hard, or that was extremely hard. But all of those are different mediums and can be interpreted in different ways. It's not just a knob like on a volume that you can say, yeah, it's at 9, let's go to 11, right? So what does that create? It creates a very difficult situation where you go back to what I was talking about before, and if something messes up, you don't know if it's because the words weren't right or if it was because it just isn't capable of doing that. And that's where I feel like the steerability we can try and borrow from patterns that we've seen in other software, in other applications. In some ways that we can do that is just by like looking at flying a plane. That's really hard. So can we bring some of these knobs to the experience of agents? Well, how would that look? I don't know. Maybe let's think about it. Some people in here may be musicians, right? I make noise sometimes. Some people might call it music, but maybe there's others out here, and this is a very familiar thing for you all. You drop into the DAW, and you see tracks. And in your tracks, you can put different filters on them. So is there a world where we experience our agentic interactions with different tracks, where agents are doing things, we can see what they're doing, and we can throw filters on them, and we can turn up the filter or turn down the filter? That could be cool. And I gotta admit, I kind of stole this idea, I interpreted this idea from a friend in the community, Linus Lee, who has brilliant ideas. He originally proposed this a few years ago on the model level, but now I feel like we can skip that altogether, because that's really hard. Trying to like get that working inside of the model and understanding it in the model, that's like crazy stuff. But what about the agent level? Why is there no way that we can see this on the agentic level, especially if we have sub-agents going and doing things, right? Another way that you could think about this is anybody in here that's a photographer or videographer is not going to be surprised by a histogram, right? So we have ways that we can interact with software right now that is able to be a little bit more fine-grained. And this, you can like bring down the shadows and bring up the whatever, contrast, darks, it doesn't matter. Imagine if you did this with agents where you're able to say like, all right, this agent has a bunch of ambition and its risk tolerance is really high. Like, That's great. Let's just have a bunch of ambitious, risky agents running around the internet. Let's see what they can get into, right? But that's kind of the idea. How can we bring some traditional or different software patterns into our agentic experience so that we don't get limited by chat and the words that are inherently fuzzy? But I feel like right now we're still in the very early innings. This is T9 word right now. What we've got is T9 word. We need a lot of iterations before we even get to the touch screen. I mean, honestly, we still got to get to the BlackBerry before we can even get to the touch screen. So the interactions that we're having with chat, I'm looking forward to how they evolve over time, right? A few other things, the potential futures that might work or you can think about and get inspired from are agents that see what we see. This is starting to happen more and more. But what about the agents that don't need us to explain all the context because they understand it? It's been such a long and deep relationship with the agent that sees what we've been seeing or it hears what we've been hearing. And so when I try to do that diagramming or when I try to explain something, it understands it better. Also, can an agent be more proactive and then reduce my cognitive load that I have to be thinking about when I want to be like, oh, what was that thing that, just give me some options right away, right? And the other thing in that same vein is guiding the user to the next best action. But the biggest out of all of these is making chat secondary, right? If we, and I challenge you to do this, think about like, how would you create agent interactions? How would you create a application? If chat was secondary, you still had it. It was an escape hatch that you could go to if all else failed. What would be first, right? How would you think about the world and your interaction with the agents if the chat was something that you did secondary? Okay, so I've explained my beef with chat. So far, we know that it kind of sucks. I guess it's not that bad, but you know what it reminds me of? Chat is like one of these shower curtains. Because it looks kind of nice, and you're like, yeah, I guess it works, it's cool. But then anybody who's had the experience of being in a shower with those shower curtains, you end up taking a shower over here and water's getting everywhere and it's freaking Lake Louise in the bathroom. And then you don't have the steam. The nice part about the shower is when it gets all steamy and hot and warm, the steam just goes away, and so you don't get that. And that's a pretty shitty experience. Like, the user experience is not good. So if you are a person that has one of these at home, I'm considering you a sociopath. Don't talk to me. I don't want to know anything about what you do. All right? That's what chat reminds me of, honestly. But where was I? All right, so we know chat kind of sucks. But now I want to talk about why the next pillar of this talk is more strategic and core to the business and how that affects the user experience than the technical side of things, right? So I will remind you, though, let's not forget, this is the coolest technology since sliced bread. But are we going to get this world that we've been promised where we get to lay on the beach and drink pina coladas while the agents do everything? Are we going to get that through just chat interactions where it's really fuzzy and we can't get our real intent transmitted across the context window? I don't know. So next up is the business context, and this is what I am coining as I clicked, and then I heard that sound. Folks in the back may not have heard that, but it was amazing. All right. So nobody wants to be a tool. Everybody wants to be an agent. This is the big problem that I'm seeing now when it comes to a more strategic level of how we're thinking about creating agents. And this, for me, is dangerous. Why is that? Because the end user suffers. The experience for the end user is not as good. And let me break it down for a moment. Let's think about it. If we have this world where we plug into agents and then it goes and it can ping out to the World Wide Web or the tooling wide web, and it can use whatever tools it needs to use to get the action done. Then we have one gateway, and it goes out into the tooling world. But how's that one agent going to look? Is it something local that I'm running on my phone? Is it something that I go to like ChatGPT for? How does that look? Because what I see now is a silo of agents being built. Because what you get is there's some agent over here. I go to ChatGPT, cool, there's some agentic capabilities. I go over to HubSpot, I've got some agentic capabilities in HubSpot. I go over to some mediocrely useful agent over here, and there's some capabilities, but I'm just like navigating to different agents. There's not cross-communication. There's not one agent that's master agent to rule them all that goes out into the world. That experience, for me, is not as good. That experience is just like, okay, this agent, cool, everything is siloed in this agent, cool, all right. And then, like, maybe that's better, I guess, kind of. And before I go any further, I know somebody in their head is probably thinking this, but MCP fixes that. And yes, kind of. So it fixes the tech side of things, but I'm going to argue why the tech side of things isn't the important part when you think about this world of I plug into an agent and then it goes and accomplishes my goals. And so the big thing that I think is a key question here is this battle that is happening for the gateway to the internet. It's like the browser wars all over again. You've now got the LLMs or the agents that want to be your front page of the internet and how you interact with the world on the internet. And so that is difficult because, let me remind you, nobody wants to be a tool. Everybody wants to be an agent. And what does that give us? That leads to slightly better software 2.0. That leads to this experience of I'm navigating here, I get some agentic capabilities. I'm navigating here, I get another agentic capability. And I want to tell you a story about when I was in Portugal, or when I was going to Portugal last month. I had the flight delayed, and so inevitably, I start talking to my LLM of choice, and I say, hey, my flight's delayed. Can I get any money back? Can I do anything, make a claim? What can I do? So it's like, yeah, I go, start talking with it, tell it this whole situation, tell it the flight number, all that. And at the end, it says, yeah, actually, you know what? You can get some money back. Make sure you do these things. And then you can see here, number 3, I get up to like $250 per person, which I was traveling with my wife and 2 kids. I'm like, I'm rich. I'm going to go make some money from this flight being delayed, right? What do you think I asked it next after it told me that I could file a claim? Somebody said, how? You're not living in the agent or the agentification of software. No. What I asked it was, go fucking do it for me. Come on, I'm too lazy to do that. And then what does it say? It says, no, I'm not going to do that for you. Are you kidding me? I'm just an AI assistant. And I'm like, well, you're not assisting much. What kind of assistant are you? Honestly, you're more like an imaginary friend that lies sometimes. You're not assistant, right? That's not what you are. So this is not the agentification of software that I am talking about. This is everybody that is wanting to be an agent, not a tool. And so what do I have to do as a user? What's my experience? Then I have to go and I have to deal with somebody. So this is like 3 different experiences that I went and I tried. One is, okay, I've got an agent capability where I talk to another chatbot and I re-explain everything. And I say, here's my flight number, here's this. I think I could get $250 back, blah, blah, blah. Or I go fill out some janky form, or I fill out a semi-new form. So that sucks. That's not the experience that I want. But why? What's keeping us from that magical experience of being able to tell the LLM of choice, just go do it, and it goes and does it? Let me remind you, nobody wants to be a tool. I mean, let's think about this. Do you really want to abstract away that relationship with your customer? No, you want to keep that for you. So what happens if there's one agent and it chooses the tools that it uses and you just are some tool that's obtuse, I can't think of the word right now, but it starts with an O. You're hidden behind another agent, right? Like the interaction that you have with the customer is not with the customer, it's with some agent. And so, think about that. Like, would Amazon want to or be okay with losing that relationship to ChatGPT? So now you're telling me that like ChatGPT is going to be the one, they're the arbiter of who goes to Amazon depending on the tools that Amazon has? That doesn't make sense, right? You're going to have to convince now the agents to use your tools. You're going to have to, as a tool, market to the agents, which now that I said that, I feel disgusting for even saying that. Let's just pretend like that didn't happen. It sounds crazy. It kind of is crazy. I regret saying it. But we are at this crossroads right now. And I want to see how it plays out because what is best for the user, this one agent to rule them all that can ping out, is not best for the companies. And so there's a big tension that's there. But let's assume, let's just say, all right, Amazon pays ChatGPT $20 billion a year, and they're the marketplace of choice, and ChatGPT sends all its traffic there. They work something out. Let's just sweep that whole idea under the rug, pretend like it works, and everything's fine. There's still another problem. And that other problem is trust. And I have trust issues. I'm going to make that shirt. I'm going to put it, it's going to say, I have trust issues. And then I'm going to wear it to KubeCon and feel cool. And see all the security people like, me too, I have trust issues. So the security people laughed. I heard like 3 people in here laughing. All right, so basically, you look at this and you think, wait a minute, I really need to trust all of these on here. There is a big barrier for us having this utopian dream if, when we have agents running around the internet with our context, and that context is potentially sensitive, maybe it's not PII, but it's stuff that I wouldn't want you guys seeing. I wouldn't want anybody else seeing, just my agent. That's cool, but I don't want it to be on the internet, right? How does the interactions between agents know to keep this as sensitive? There's none of that right now. And when you think about the nature of how the context windows work, you get like the accordion of, oh, it expands ideas and then it summarizes ideas. After 3 or 4 rotations of that, all my sensitive stuff, you're not going to know what was sensitive, what wasn't, what should we say, what should we not say. Okay, cool. So context, trust issues. Authentication. If agents are going to be doing stuff for me, they got to get into my systems. And now, what I see as a pattern, which is very sketch, is that you just give the agent a bot token and you give it God mode and you're like, go figure it out. You can have access to all my email, all my Notion documents, anything you want. Take it, agent. But that's not what I'm looking for. I have trust issues. So what do I want? I want permissions, very fine-grained permissions, being able to say, you can have access to this time, but that's it. Right? And it's only this. When you go in the email, you can only read this. You can only search for this query. That's it. You can't write emails to my boss. I definitely don't want that. So sometimes, and with permissions, actually, there's something really fascinating for me about permissions because sometimes you do want the agent to buy something for you. Like, I actually do want the agent to buy me those high heels for my wife. And I want them to buy it once, not 50 times. So I got to be able to dynamically give and revoke permissions and be like, all right, cool. You bought the high heels. Now get out of there. You don't have access to being able to use that anymore. And lastly, it comes to the action. I want to be able to know, hey, can you take this action reliably? And can you take the right action? And then can you tell me that you took the action and show me how you did it? Because I want to make sure that we're on the same page when you're taking actions for me, right? As me. So I've got trust issues. I need to be able to trust the agent with my data. I need to be able to trust that the agent has the right permissions. And I need to be able to trust that the agent takes the right action. And for anyone, whoever those security folks were that were laughing over here, they're probably thinking right now, you're just talking about shooting yourself in the foot. You're not talking about nefarious actors going around and saying, oh, you've got your agents with all that sensitive data? Let me just grab that. Thank you. That's mine now. I'm going to put it in my back pocket. Like, I didn't even mention any of that because that's way out of my wheelhouse. But I know it happens. So how can we think about some kind of a potential future? Oh, and last thing I will say, because I think this is a great way of thinking about it when it comes to the permissions, which I've been thinking about a lot lately, is that my buddy Sam says, what's the most dangerous part of a car? It's the human. So what's the most dangerous part of an agent? It's the LLM. If we want to allow the agents to do things, we got to be very fine-grained with our permissions. Anyway, what are some potential futures for this? Well, you could think about, I went too far. You could think about maybe there's some kind of verifiable agent marketplace or some MCP marketplace that's happening that you have like SOC 2, or you have certain things that are defined that like this agent follows this protocol to share context, so it's cool and you can use it. You know, as a company, you kind of like you covered your back. And how are we going to tap into agents? Well, maybe one agent can go to many other agents, and whatever agent I plug into can go and it can do things with other agents. What is there? Some kind of like I've got my own identity system that it can tap into as an MCP server? I don't know. That's for you guys to figure out, right? Also, we got to figure out how to safely transport this data. That's not a new thing. We've been transporting data across the internet and across systems for ages, but now that it's with context windows and prompts, we got to think through that and how is that going to be super locked down and secure. And lastly, thinking about the minimum viable permissions. So I know that most folks here are AI engineers, data engineers, and you probably don't think so much about UX. Hopefully this has been valuable. It's spurred some ideas. It's gotten you to think a little bit differently, a little bit outside of your wheelhouse. And I'm going to assume that if nobody asks any question, I just bombed this talk, all right? So now I'm going to open it up to questions, but I'm going to tell one last joke, and that is an experience that I had with ChatGPT. I said, all right, ChatGPT, choose a number between 1 and 50. And it said 32. And I went, okay, I will now stop all communication with you for the next 32 days. And it said, you know what? Can I choose another number? And I thought, wow, how sweet. That's nice. Well, of course you can choose another number, ChatGPT. And so it responded, and it said 50. That's what we've got, fucking controlling these agents. All right, folks. If you scan that QR code, that's my LinkedIn. You can also hit me up on email right there. And if you want to join the MLOps community, that's the website. Now, I get to shake in my boots and see if anybody asks questions. We got one.
Hi, Demetrios, this is Alexei. Amazing and inspiring talk. Fantastic opening. Thank you for this. Super awesome. So I love the idea, different UX, but we kind of envision the future where we chat to AI laying on the couch, driving in the car. Hard to have computers with you.
Yeah.
What do you think about kind of where do we do it and how do we do it to take this advantage of this nice and wonderful UIs?
Yes. So I paid him to say those nice things at the beginning of his question. I think right now we just got to get over some basic stuff. But if you think about it, we want to meet folks where they are. And if we're going to be on the couch, if we're going to be in the car, if we're going to be doing this stuff, like we don't want to be texting or trying to do that fine-grained twisting knobs. if it's on our phone, in the car, while we're driving. That won't work, right? So how do we get through to the machine? It seems like there's voice is a common one, but voice with maybe some kind of understanding with the camera so that we can get more data. Like anybody who's played with voice agents or built voice agents knows that it's a step up above just normal agents because of the amount of data that you are getting, and there's inherent complexities with that. So now you add on another complexity of, oh, we're going to be taking in video feed as we're getting voice. That's going to be super hard. So hopefully we'll see just some steps on with what we are used to with the traditional UX. But yeah, I can for sure see a world where we move to jamming like we do now. I think that's actually becoming a common pattern, is just jamming and brainstorming and then saying, all right, now summarize what I said. Let's drop that off into some place where I can then go and I can fine-grain deal with it in a much more precise manner. What else we got? I see somebody back there.
Hi. Thanks for the talk. Yeah, a lot of problems I hear that I think are real, but we need to think about solutions. And one of the ones that I personally also feel very strongly is that just getting the message output is a lot of work for me to read it all. And I prefer this like whiteboard drawings, these kind of things. And I guess we don't have the full thing you're describing, because you're like talking about like, or pointing at a diagram and scraping things too. But one of the things I've been asking my agents to do a lot is to generate mermaid diagrams to kind of get a little bit in that direction. I don't feel like they're very good at it. And they tend to lean towards like these architecture diagrams, very high level, and not these like short interactions. But I think a large part of the problem I imagine that causes that is that there's not a lot of training data on how to do these generated mermaid diagrams, because in my experience, my colleagues don't do that either. They talk a lot, and they sometimes get up to the whiteboard, but definitely like putting it into the documentation, creating diagrams and things like that. I think we didn't generate a lot of data for the LLMs to train on that, and I think like it's interesting to convince people to do that more, because it's valuable not only for the LLMs, but definitely for the LLMs. What do you think about that?
I agree. I wholeheartedly agree with everything you said. What else do we got?
Hi, thanks for the great talk. I wanted to ask you, if we've come to build UIs for AI, why don't we just build apps?
Build apps?
Yeah.
Can you explain? Where are you, by the way? Can you raise your hand?
Just build apps that don't use AI and have a UI and a common user experience, and we would get the same goal.
So I think one thing that, for me, is an incredible future is to think about, can we plug into one common source and then ping out to many different things, so we can get a lot of different and diverse tasks done through one place. We don't have to context switch. We don't have to learn new apps, new interfaces, all of that. And that's why this idea, this vision of like the agentification of software is really inspiring for me. It's because, well, if we can not have to click around, like I've spent so much time trying to learn new interfaces or click around, where's that setting that I need to get? Where's that like secret, or where's that key that I need to pull? Can I just say it and then get it? Or can I think about, what did I even need that secret for? Can I just do that, ask it to get that done, and then it can figure out how to get the secret or get the API key or whatever it may be. Does that make sense? Oh, I think you lost her. All right, cool.
One more question.
One more. All right.
Thank you for this amazing talk and inspiring keynote. I hope to get the same compensation as the other guy. Now for the
What,
question.
did you just say, I hope to get the same compensation?
So a lot of the issues or challenges you identified, I think, can be reduced to a certain extent with open source models. Do you believe that going forward with closed source models, which is what most people are consuming at the moment, is compatible with the challenges you've seen? Do you think this makes it harder, or what's your take on that?
So there's something fascinating. Like, the cool thing about open source models is we can go and build with that in a way and have more capability to play with it, like at the end of the day. But with the closed source models, you're kind of beholden to what they decide is the way to do it and how they decide your interaction and your experience is going to be, and then what they decide what tools their agents are going to use, right? So it's just, you can, as a builder, using open source, you can go out there and create what you want to see much easier than if it's hidden behind a closed source model and then they figure out how they're pinging out to tools or how they're giving you different UXs or UIs.
I have a question here.
All right, we got one
great
more.
Talk. You used the analogy that the most dangerous part of a car is the human.
Yeah.
Why isn't this true for agents? Why is the human less dangerous than the LLM?
I mean, I have a shirt that says, I hallucinate more than ChatGPT. And so maybe I am more dangerous than the LLM, but normally when I want to write an email to my boss, I don't say things that could be hallucinated. I save that for my weekend trips and not for the workday, right? So I think you just have a lot more variability on how things can go off the rails when you're dealing with agents.
I think I get the last question.
Yeah.
Where did you get that T-shirt with I hallucinate more with?
You can go to, I also paid this person. You can go to shop.mlops.community and you'll find it. Yeah. We've got another one, because after my time in San Francisco, I talked to too many people that talk too much to LLMs, and so I created another shirt that says, just because you have visions doesn't make you a visionary. There's too many of those people in San Francisco, I find. All right, I got 30 seconds. It's going to be quick. Hit me.
Okay. Can you hear me? Okay, perfect. Thanks for the talk.
Hi.
So my question is about the proactive experience, because I was trying to experiment with that, but
Yeah.
what struck me was that how do we personalize this experience? What I'm afraid of is that we're going to get repetitive for every user, because it's always the best course of action, always the same suggestions, you see?
Yeah, there's personalization, and then you don't want to get alert overload or like notifications. You don't want to keep pinging the user. I think this would be good. I think that would be good. We all have had that with an app that we downloaded, and it's like, shut up. I'm silencing and deleting the app. So that's where you got to just start really playing around with it, and that's where from now until whenever, and when we really figure it out, we're going to have to just fine-tune it and figure out what is the best. Personalization is a whole nother factor of it. I would be more worried. I feel like the biggest bottleneck is just pinging folks with too many things and making them get like fatigued from all of your notifications that are popping up. If you have the LLM there and it's gathering all the context and it's like, oh yeah, hey, you might want to do this now. And you're like, no, I am not doing that at all. And one of the hard things, I'm sure many of you that have played around with any kind of memory in agents, you notice that there's the memory of how to accomplish a task reliably. Like, I did this task before. Now I'm going to be able to do it always because I did it. The hard part there is that a lot of times we have very similar tasks, but they're not exactly the same. And the agent thinks, oh yeah, this is the same task. And it goes and does it like it did that one, but it's not the same. And so then it fails. And I don't know why I went on that tangent with what you were talking about, but it's kind of like, it feels like that's kind of related when it comes to like the personalization. So I think that's it. I think that is all. Thank you for sticking around.